But there will be, again, a full-scale operation of flying saucers all over American areas on July 1st. This will be in 3 phases as follows. I am back from a little dibble out the kibble, as we call it, a little dab out the dab. I mean, I don't know. I was trying to do something silly there, and it just didn't work now, did it? So, flat out, this episode is about Nikola Tesla's very real likelihood of being from another planet. And I know that sounds absurd, but we're going to go through this bit by bit. I believe that I am going to be the very first person to truly cover this. I have scoured TikTok, I've scoured YouTube, Instagram, everything. The only thing I've ever found on this was one woman, and I'm not going to name her because, you know, I'm not big, I'm not nothing, so I'm not trying to, you know, put people in places they don't need to be put. But I found one video, and it's about a woman who was doing astrology readings. She was doing spiritual tarot, you know, so her video wasn't necessarily based in science, right? But I have a lot of evidence and a lot of science to discuss with you guys, including FBI documents, unsealed directly from the FBI vault, okay? So there's a lot of shit that we're going to discuss. But the first thing, I just want to summarize who he is, right? Who is Nikola Tesla? As we all know, he was a great inventor. A lot of people falsely claim that he went neck and neck with Thomas Edison. However, that's not the case. It's not the case at all. He was very, very superior to Thomas Edison. The keys here, Thomas Edison had an investor who used to be Nikola Tesla's investor. The guy's name is J.P. Morgan Chase. You probably fucking know that name, right? Banker. He was a very well-known banker. He funded Thomas Edison after pulling out of Tesla. And he wasn't a very well-known funder of Tesla. He just funded him on some of his earlier projects back before people started thinking that Tesla was crazy, which is very common knowledge. When Tesla died at the age of 85 years old, he died with virtually no assets to his name, no lovers, no children. The only thing he had, the only family he had was nephews, and I think a niece. But he had a couple of nephews and a niece that he left his patents to. And of course, the federal government fucking stole those, which we'll discuss at a later time. But right off the top, what is Tesla known for, right? A lot of you guys are going to know him for the Tesla coil. It's one of his greatest inventions, as we already know. But frankly, I don't really know what it does. I just know that it essentially creates lightning out of thin air, right? Just a shit, which is very cool, but I don't exactly know what that translates to. I believe he just used it to harness energy, and then in conjunction with another device, I believe he stored that energy. Similar to a modern day battery, right? Another invention that he was very well known for that I do actually do a little bit of deep diving on is his Tesla turbine, which is really fucking cool. The Tesla turbine is like it's like a combination of hydrostatic dams, which are like, you know, dams that use turbines in them to create electricity. It's essentially a combination of that and a wind turbine. It's like a one and done turbine that can use any and all material to convert fluid into electricity. The reason why I say fluid is because it can actually work with the solid and gas states as well, which is fucking weird. But this was back in 1906. And it made as much power as a Honda Civic in today. Swear to God. It actually makes 200 horsepower on its own when it's fully utilized to full efficiency. Which, of course, you know, that means you have to have a whole plethora of perfection going on. But let's say it's not at peak efficiency, it's at half. 100 years ago, he was making a 100 horsepower, you know, device that ran off of mechanical energy. Meaning not batteries, not electricity. It turned into electricity, right? So Tesla did a lot of very, very cool things. Most people that are well read in this topic are kind of standoffish to Thomas Edison because they were kind of buddies. A lot of the science community were buddies back then because they worked on projects. They had very strong and brilliant minds, and they wanted to work together as teammates, essentially, to come together for the common good. Like, for example, a sidebar here, during the Manhattan Project, which is when we made nuclear weaponry, we actually had help of Nazi scientists that defected from Germany after they learned about the Holocaust, right? So when it comes to science, people are, they're unbiased. If we can reach a common goal together, let's do it. And that's essentially how Thomas Edison and Tesla became buddies. And that wasn't a bad problem until he started robbing him of his work, right? It's very common knowledge that Thomas Edison stole the patent of the light bulb. And it's fucking whitewashed history. And I don't mean to go down a rabbit hole, but it's whitewashed history where they say, oh, he found 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb, and he only needed to find one. Yeah, he stole one. Okay, so we're just going to say that. That's not to say that Thomas Edison isn't a great inventor in his own right. But if some of your greatest glory is built on the backs of plagiarism, are you really that guy? So let's get into the next little thesis here. Without going further into depth, he is really the grandfather of hydroelectricity, like that the hydrostatic dams I was telling you about. He's really the father of hydroelectricity, modern day radio, alternating current, electromagnetic induction, and then as well as the other things like the actual devices I was talking about, like Tesla coil, Tesla turbine. He was also the inventor of what's modern day Bluetooth and remote controls. Bet you didn't know that. He had wireless communication built in 1894 to 1895. The records were just kind of shoddy. Built in 1894 to 1895, he built a transmitter with a portable receiver and demonstrated wireless transmission of electrical energy. He built this theory based off of what he learned in the pyramids, which that is its own video. I could probably make a 30-minute video on just Tesla and his travels, because the majority of his inventions came upon epiphanies that he had while experiencing travels. For example, he invented over a dozen things just while being in New York because of how much culture and life and just existence is in New York, right? He invented the Wardenclyffe Tower in New York, the Tesla coil, and then several other devices as well. But yeah, he invented the radio, and that is where I want to develop this thesis that he is from another planet, okay? The reason why I want to develop this thesis is because we all know of people like Carl Sagan, or at least I hope you guys know of people like Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson. I fucking love him. He goes on Joe Rogan. He goes on, I think he's been on Theo Vaughn, and he's been on a plethora of other phenomenal podcasters. But he's an astrophysicist and also just a world-renowned celebrity, if you will. He's arguably the most well-known scientist besides Bill Nye. Right? But Carl Sagan, way back before he died, rest in peace, he and another scientist, I forget his first name, but his last name is Drake, they developed the Drake equation, in which they theorized that 12,500 intelligent races exist. And they came up with this theory based off of what Nikola Tesla had found out. In 1899, radio pioneer Nikola Tesla claimed to have received a wireless transmission from the planet Mars, which not only confirmed the existence of intelligent life, but also invited a response. Immediately thereafter, he theorized that we were receiving music from Mars by means of Morse code, where they, where they make noises to make words. He theorized that they had their own music that they were sending to Earth for us to transmit. And to this day, it's never been translated, so it cannot technically be proven or disproven, which that's where I like to spend a lot of my theories based on. Because here's my take. In my household and in this country, it's innocent until proven guilty, right? But I also trust you until you give me a reason not to. And in this circumstance, when the literal smartest man to exist at the time says that he talked to another planet, I kind of believe that. Especially when I go into the FBI document. I'm very excited to talk about this one. Tesla invented over 100 things in his lifetime. He flat out did. And like I said, I believe I'm the only person to ever talk about this publicly. I scoured fucking podcasts, I've Googled, I've done everything. And the only thing that comes up when I Google this topic is the FBI document itself. So that's something we need to take in with a massive fucking grain of salt, okay? Massive grain of salt, because when you find something like that where you have when you find something like that where the FBI or the CIA or the NSA is the first link that says something, and then you cannot find anything else of it on the entire internet, that typically is indicative of something. That typically means that there's been information that has been scrubbed, right? And That's not a conspiracy. It's legal. It was legalized when the internet was invented. I think about 5 years afterwards. It was legalized that you could scrub information for national security. And then it got even tighter after 9/11, right? So anyways, the only thing I'm able to find about this directly is the FBI document, and it's long. If any of you guys want this, I can send it to you via email. Now, I want to preface. This is a document from a blog, right? However, if it's canonized and stored and immortalized by the FBI, that means this is something that they themselves were also entertaining. They themselves were curious if this could be authentic, so they stored it for later use. I'm not saying it's true. I'm not saying it's false, but I am saying I believe in it. This is literally page 3 of the document. It's 64 pages, and on fucking page 3, this is what it says. So it says June 4th, 1957. This was 14 years after he died. He died in 1943, before we invented nukes and before the end of World War II. So anyways, it says Interplanetary Sessions newsletter. Dear friends, we have not issued a newsletter since May 1st, 1956, because we had no space news which we could consider authentic. Curious. Satellites were already invented by that time, right? We were launching satellites as early as, I think, 1953. So, I mean, to say that there was nothing juicy to provide in over 7 weeks in the news in the space industry is crazy. I don't know if I believe that. The space race in the 50s was beautiful, and that could be another topic that we dive deep on together as well. It says, however, we now have some good news to pass along to you. This is lecture by George Van Tassel and Dan Fry in Ballroom of Hotel Diplomat, 110 West 43rd Street, New York City, 8 p.m., Thursday, June 20th, 1957. It says that entry is free, but donations of $1.25 are accepted. Kind of cool. 5 quarters. Okay. George Van Tassel operates the Giant Rock Spaceport. This is in California. And airport. It has been host at 4 annual spacecraft conventions. He is the author of 2 books, I Wrote a Flying Saucer, and Into This World and Out Again. He is also the publisher of Proceedings magazine. Back issues of Proceedings have been reprinted in 1 volume. Address: George Van Tassel, P.O. Box 419, Yucca Valley, California. Yucca, yucca. Dan Fry is the author of the White Sands incident, which that's a whole other topic as well. But White Sands is a missile testing range by the federal government. I forget if it's the Air Force or the Army that operates it, but I think it's in Nevada or New Mexico. It's in the desert. In this book, he tells the author of a trip which he made on a flying saucer from a desert spot on the White Sands Proving Ground. I've read this, by the way. From New Mexico to New York City, and in return, 32 minutes. So they went from New Mexico to New York and back in 32 minutes. That's a flight time of 16 minutes to. It's 16 minutes from. Next paragraph. Dan Fry and another gentleman are now en route to New York by automobile. George Van Tassel and Art Au will arrive in Mr. Au's plane. They all plan to be in New York City at Hotel Diplomat on June 17th. All of this is verifiable, by the way. They will probably be heard next week on Long John's program on radio station WOR from 12 midnight to 5:30 in the morning, nightly, except for Sunday, of course, for the good Lord. This letter will not reach you in time to sight flying saucers over New York on the night of June 13th from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Quick little 20-second sidebar. Flying saucers during the 40s and 50s notoriously only went to nuclear testing sites. Places like Washington. Yes, we have a nuclear testing site. Places like Washington, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, but not New York. Why were they being seen in New York, especially in the 50s, after nukes have already been well invented and sadly being used as well? This letter will not reach you in time to sight flying saucers over New York on the night of June 13th from 10 to 1 a.m. But there will be again a full-scale operation of flying saucers all over American areas on July 1st. This will be in 3 phases as follows. New York areas, July 1st, 9 a.m. Washington, D.C. Yes, that's a location that's non-nuclear that does have a lot of UFO targets for obvious reasons. Washington, D.C. areas at 9:25 a.m. Now notice that. That's over 300 miles away, and the sightings is only going to be 20 minutes apart. So that's pretty interesting. General North American areas. This means typically just your rural areas in the Midwest, right? Your Kansases, your Nebraskas, your Oklahomas. After 9:25 a.m., Central American areas, 9:30 a.m. South American areas, 9:35 a.m. So they're going to hit an entire continent in the span of 30 minutes with visuals. The second phase is going to begin as the same areas as above, but it begins at 12 o'clock midday on July 1st. Third phase, full-scale operations over all American areas beginning at 7 o'clock in the evening of July 1st. Tunguska, it was gnarly. It was larger than Mount St. Helens. Let's say that. Mount St. Helens clouded out about half the country in ash, right? Tunguska, thankfully, because it was in Siberia, it didn't actually impact very many people. Actually, hardly any. I think only 10,000 people were even regionally affected, meaning, like, you know, they had their weather moderately adjusted from it, you know? The gnarliest part about it is it's still a location that you can visit today. Now, well, the reason why I bring that up, and this is why I think my guys from Venus, okay? The reason why I bring that up is because that was the one and only day that Nikola Tesla fired up the Wardenclyffe Tower. Because that was on the morning of June 30th, 1908 in Siberia, which was really June 29th, 1908 in New York City, which is when he fired it up. It's fucking mind-boggling. At first, I always thought this was such a stupid theory because I never understood the two in correlation. But I've recently done some research, and yes, they actually did occur on the same day at roughly the same time. The only difference was an hour interval. There was about an hour difference between the two. And as I kind of told you guys before, you know, those UFOs that are being well documented. I mean, again, that was from an FBI document. Those UFOs that were documented by the FBI, or documented by the FBI, they say that, you know, UFOs can travel from New York all the way down to northern Brazil in about 30 minutes. Well, triangulate that time. Triangulate that distance. That lines up very well within the amount of time it would take for New York to reach Tunguska in Siberia. It's about twice as far as the distance from New York to Brazil. So, I mean, the timeline lines up very well. The reason why I say the airburst theory seems a little bit suspect is because if you just fucking look at it, it doesn't look like an airburst crater. Airbursts don't even leave fucking craters. They usually scorch the earth. They usually will leave like a trail. You know, they don't leave like a crater, right? They don't leave those usually. The reason why Tunguska and Tesla are directly related is because he was experimenting with wireless communication in New York at the time, at the Wardenclyffe Tower. And that was the one and only time that it was fired up. I talked about that. I'm just kind of getting back to where we were. If you go to teslasociety.com, and this is his foundation, this is his, well, not his, but it's the website in his honor, right? He died 50 years before the internet was invented, but he, there's a website that's in his honor. It's a foundation in his name regarding to the building and what's left of it, right? And I'm just going to read it from the jump. Did you know that in 1908 in Siberia, one of the most catastrophic, mind-blowing, and mysterious, cosmic impact catastrophes ever in the history of civilization occurred, and yet it wasn't widely known outside Russia until around the 1970s. Even local research parties didn't learn about it or set foot at the scene of the disaster until 1921, 13 years later. Okay, I'm going to scoot forward a little bit. It globally detected pressure and seismic waves and bright luminescence in the night skies, essentially aurora borealis. However, this was seen in Europe and Central Asia, not just in the north. Right? So this is a massive phenomenon that local people saw roughly halfway around the world. About half of the people alive at the time could see aurora borealis the nights, or the night of and the nights after the event occurred. Now, the official story is that it was a meteor airburst, which means that it exploded in the air and shrapneled, similar to like a shotgun shooting into a barrel, the Earth. And that's essentially what the argument is. However, if you Google this, there's a very, very massive crater, which is not indicative at all of a meteor airburst. Don't ask me how I know this. I'm just an encyclopedia of autistic knowledge, if you will. And you guys are going to find that out very quickly. I just be researching shit to research shit. I literally Googled what the hell my ingredients were in the food that I ate today because I didn't know what they were. And I recommend you do so too. It'll scare the shit out of you. But anyway, the official story says that the impact occurred, or excuse me, the explosion occurred 5 to 10 kilometers above ground. So we're talking several miles above the ground. And it released anywhere between 10 and 15 megatons of energy, which is crazy. The other article I read said 3 megatons of energy, but this one's higher. And if that one's higher, that's actually meaning that's the size, or up to the size, of the bomb in Nagasaki, which I believe was smaller. Hiroshima was the bigger bomb. But it doesn't matter. We're talking about an electrical charge that created more or similar power as a nuclear bomb. Okay, and the reason why this is important is because most people don't even think that Tesla is related to this incident, right? Let's keep reading. It says Nikola Tesla was testing out some weird phantasmagorical. I'm proud of myself that I was able to say that first try. Wow. Phantasmagorical communication device, or super scary energy weapon, or death ray. And he made a big oops. Tesla was known to be working on a sort of wireless torpedo called a telautomaton. That's where I'm going to get stumped. It's telautomaton? It's like automaton? Automaton. We're going to get autistic together, okay? Which was a remote-controlled boat you offered to the U.S. Navy for the purpose of carrying explosives to naval targets. Fun fact, that's in Red Dead Redemption. Swear to God, it's literally a side mission you guys can do in Saint Denis. If you don't believe me, Google it. It's a very fun and rather cute cutscene. I suggest you watch it. Kind of cool that Rockstar put that in a game, because most people have no fucking clue about it. But anyway, some also believe that if there was a Tesla connection, that it was a weapons test, that he may have been pressured into it and then kept quiet. Right. The reason why this is important is because you're looking at something that was more powerful, not in explosion, but in just ability, if you will. You're looking at something that's more powerful in ability than nuclear bombs today. It's undetectable, it's untraceable, it's unstoppable, right? It's able to be exploded miles into the sky and still create a crater. That's obnoxious. Nukes today can create craters with air bursts, but I'm talking like a mile in the air, maybe 1,500 feet in the air, not 10 miles or 10 kilometers, excuse me. The reason why I think this is proof that he may be from another planet, besides the sheer power of this device, is because of its ability to leave the planet and then come back to it, right? A lot of people think that UFO energy is based off of anti-gravity. You guys can research Bob Lazar, Neil deGrasse Tyson, several very, very well-known scientists that will give you more info on that. I definitely recommend looking into it. But the gist of this article basically just says that this guy very, very well could have been involved in some interplanetary weaponry, if you will. I'm personally in love with it. I think that the theory is ridiculous. I don't know if I believe in it fully. I do. But I know for a fact, I personally believe that he's from another planet. I don't know if I think Tunguska is 1,000% related, but I mean, the stats line up. He fired up Wardenclyffe the night that occurred. He wrote down in his diary that he made a grave mistake. He made a grave error, but he would not elaborate further. And then roughly an hour later, a non-nuclear event that had power to be nuclear occurred in a remote location on the Earth that wasn't located until 13 years later. Bro, if I dropped a nuke literally anywhere in the world right now, do you think it would go undiscovered for fucking 13 years? You see what I'm saying? Like, there's some shit about this that's just a little bit odd. Even the official story is fucking odd. So, I think that's where I'm going to wrap it up for today. I really like discussing this topic, and if anybody wants to talk about it further, I'd love to have a guest on. We could do a live analysis. I could pull up some articles. Hey, pull that up, Jamie. And it would be great. But until then, I'm going to go take some dabs. I'm going to go drink some beers. I'm going to go hang out with my wife. And we're going to come up with the next topic for research. But I'll be honest, the next podcast is going to be more of a casual. Tonight, I just wanted to wrap up my first podcast and get you guys kind of a taste of what this is going to be about. It's going to be a whole lot of research. It's going to be a whole lot of current events, a whole lot of sports. I'm going to get guests on here soon, hopefully. I just need to start kind of getting this cranked out. And of course, don't want to have guests on here wasting their time if I'm not getting more than my own view on it, you know what I mean? So we're going to work on it. But for now, this was Turning the Pages. Have yourself a good one.